What's up, folks, and welcome to Indie Ramble. Okay, this is going to be a hard one to talk about because this is another one of those games where basically almost anything I can talk about is a spoiler. I am going to be starting a new game here to try to minimize that, and I'm going to try to give you a good idea of what you're in for with this. But if at any point you think this looks interesting to you, just go get it. Honestly, this was a huge surprise to me, and right now as I'm recording this is possibly my indie game of the year. So yes, this is Slay the Princess, and this has already kind of hit the indie zeitgeist. I'm a little late on this one, but I ended up playing an entire run of this, if you will, in one sitting, and that's something I almost never do anymore because this game is the equivalent of a page turner, really. It's a kind of like a visual novel, but not the way you would normally think of them. It's hi, I haven't seen that happen before. Oh boy. It's very, very choices matter, and it is a lot of dialogue, but all fully voiced and generally quite well acted, which is also very cool. And it goes places. It's one of these games that completely defies your expectations and goes in places you had no idea, and by the end you're like, what in the actual did I just play? Yeah, so all right, let's get this started so I can show this to you here. Now I'm gonna let you hear some of the narration here because it's really good.
You're on a path in the woods, and at the end of that path is a cabin, and in the basement of that cabin is a princess. You're here to slay her. If you don't, it will be the end of the world.
So yeah, everything is spoken and you have choices to make. Explore, it generally, but not always, means it's a choice you can make that gives you some more exposition and context, but doesn't necessarily advance the scene forward. And then later on, you'll see here that there are choices that you can make that will sort of push things ahead. So I'll let you hear a little bit more here.
I'm talking about the end of everything as we know it. No more birds, no more trees, and perhaps most problematically of all, no more people.
Is it?
You have to put an end to her. Don't linger on the specifics. You have a job to do here. Just get in there and do what needs to be done. We're all counting on you.
So yeah, the game's title, very literal, very literal. So here, let's move up a little bit more.
You make your way up the short path to the cabin. You'll find the princess within. A warning before you go any further. She will lie, she will cheat, and she will do everything in her power to stop you from slaying her. Don't believe a word she says. We're not going to go through with this, right? She's a princess. We're supposed to save princesses, not slay them. Ignore him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. The interior of the cabin is almost entirely bare. The air is stale and musty, and the floor and walls are painted in a fine layer of dust. The only furniture of note is a plain wooden table. Perched on that table is a pristine blade. The blade is your implement. You'll need it if you want to do this right.
Is this voice acting not friggin' amazing? So you may have noticed there that in addition to the narrator, there was another character called the voice of the hero. There's a few of those in the game. I'm not going to spoil any of them, but there's a few of those that you're going to hear from. And interestingly, they're all played by the same voice actor, but sometimes you would barely think so with how good a job he does with them. It's really, really amazing. And I'm going to just go a little bit further here so you can hear a little bit of the princess speaking. Do it without the blade.
The door to the basement creaks open, revealing a staircase faintly illuminated by an unseen light in the room below. Her voice soft.
Hello? Is someone there?
It's hypnotizing. It's the kind of voice you only have to hear once to remember it for the rest of your life. Don't let it fool you. It's all part of the manipulation.
Don't be a stranger. It's been so long since I've had any visitors. Please, come downstairs.
You walk down the stairs and lock eyes with the princess. There's a heavy chain around her wrist, binding her to the far wall of the basement. She's beautiful. How could someone like this be a threat to anyone? I am begging you to stay focused. There's a lot right.
Hi. Do you think you can get me out of these chains?
So, all right. So let's talk about this a little bit. So as you can see, this does seem a little visual novel-y. There is a lot of dialogue and there's a lot of choices. If you're familiar with visual novels, you'll also recognize some of these options down here. You can quick save and load at any time, which is nice. There's sort of a main save. You can auto skip the text ahead. You can skip sequences that you previously played, and it will take you right to the choice. So you don't have to listen to a whole pile of dialogue over again if you don't want to, which is nice. And then you've got a full history of your conversation here that you can return to. And there's a bunch of different preferences here as well, including some accessibility stuff, which is always neat. So this game is all about choice and conversation, and it is a time loop game, kind of. Again, this is really hard to talk about without getting into spoilers, but you will do several different loops here, and the loops will change. And there are, well, about 1 billion achievements in this, 97 in total. I've done a full run. As you can see, I've only barely gotten above a quarter of them. So you can play this over and over multiple times, going in vastly different directions and seeing vastly different things happen. And the places that this game goes, like, there were points I was like, what? Like, it really, really surprised me. If you are a longtime follower of my community, you will maybe remember back in my Mixer streaming days many years ago, when myself and another community member played through Doki Doki Literature Club on stream. They were acting out the voice part. They were acting out the dialogue for me because it was not a voiced game. And by the end of that, my brain was fried. It was so nuts with the directions in which that went. And that is exactly what this does, only with far fewer characters, far fewer actors, and it goes in a very different direction. Obviously, it's a very different theme, rather dark, and, you know, it's dark. And you can see it all takes place in this sort of black and white way. This art is very, very cool. It's all line drawn. I believe it's all hand drawn. And it has that sort of comic book in motion shimmering effect to it. You will spend a lot of time in a handful of the same environments, but the environments do change. And it does mix things up later on, and we'll get, like, you will go to some different places in this. And it has a very Stanley Parable vibe to it. Nearly every situation, you are not forced into a choice. You can choose to pursue things in various different ways you want. You will have voices in your head, if you will, that are trying to convince you to do certain things. You can go with them, or you can go, nuh-uh, I'm going my own way. And the game will respond to that and give you completely different outcomes in some cases. It's the places this goes is really astonishing. And apparently the developer who made this is like, the core team is only 2 people. And it's really impressive because the sheer amount of writing in this, and then all the fact that every word of it is spoken, is amazing for a game of this tight a scope and scale. It really impressed me. I am not a big visual novel guy. I know there are people out there who love them, and I have played a handful that I have quite liked, but it's just not a genre that's for me, especially the very, you know, anime type of things. This is not my jam. But I'd heard people talk about this and say, yo, you got to check this out. And I went, okay, let's see what it's about. And I didn't even really know it was a visual novel when I started it. But man, this went from something that I thought was kind of interesting, and I'm like, yeah, all right, I'll poke and prod at this and then make a video about it, to being one of my indie games of the year. And this year, I have beaten over 70 games so far. I'm thinking I might be able to get to 75 or 80 by the end of December. And so that's of 80 games I've beaten this year. This very well, I'm not going to say this is going to be my overall game of the year. That's probably going to be Baldur's Gate 3, like just about everyone else in the universe. But in terms of favorite indie game, this very well could be it. And I'm surprised because this has been a great year for new games. And I have, I couldn't put this down. I went to bed on a work night way later than I should have the night I played this game, because I couldn't put it down until I'd seen it to the end. Because just when you think you've hit a point where you're going to have to do the same loop over and over and you think, oh, this is going to get boring, it throws a complete curveball at you and goes in a totally different direction and opens a whole new avenue of possibilities where you're just like, I can't believe this. Like, I have to, you know, I have to see where this goes. Like I said, the video game version of a page turner. And I haven't played a game like that in a very long time. One that has locked me in to the point where I just can't walk away from it. Lots of games I enjoy, but they don't necessarily grab me to that degree. And this did. So in, you know, really in terms of what you see as a recommendation from me, maybe that is very high praise that I couldn't put this down. And I'm really trying hard here to not spoil anything. That's why we're in this sort of first run here. Is I don't want to give anything away. If you're not interested in this kind of game, or you don't think that this particular one looks interesting to you, fair deal. These are not for everybody. But if you're someone who thinks this is interesting to you, you really should just go buy it and give it a go. It's been popular. This is not a niche title. It, you know, it hasn't been buried or anything like that, which is very good in my opinion. It's already quite popular as I make this video, but I had to give you my own impressions on it, because it has resonated and stuck with me that much. This is a game I was thinking about well after I played it, which doesn't happen often. And, you know, a lot of the games I finish, even the ones I enjoy, I don't tend to remember that much of. It's just kind of the way my memory is. But this one, I've actively thought about and been like, whoa, you know, and it's really, it really impressed me. And I love the voice acting. I love the writing. I love this simplistic but very resonating art style. The melancholy soundtrack is really incredible and adds to the atmosphere. It just feels like a very polished experience, and yet very complicated at the same time. There is an incredible amount of depth to this, but the developers also made it a very tight experience. There's only a handful of characters, and you're not changing locations a million times. You don't have to maintain relationships between 20 different characters like you do in a lot of visual novels. You're focused on this one dilemma and the almost butterfly effect like impacts that you can have later on. Something that you can do very early in this game can affect something much, much later. And in ways that you'll do something that you don't even think mattered that much, and then 2 hours later it'll be like, hey, remember when you did this? And you're like, oh no. it's that kind of thing. There aren't a lot of games like this there are a lot of games in this genre that are good but can't do things like that this well, with Stanley Parable levels of long-term impact of your choices. And that's really what this does. And it's way darker than Stanley Principle, but like Stanley Principle, why am I saying Principle? Stanley Parable, my God, Parallax. You know, while it's a lot darker than Stanley Parable, it also has similar amounts of depth and things where it goes places and you're like, oh, there's way more layers to this than I thought there was. And that's what this is. So I don't want to talk too much further about it beyond this first segment here, but this game has impressed the ever-loving crap out of me, and I really enjoyed my time with it. I would like to do more runs making different choices to see where things can go. And if you like Choices Matter stuff with very unique, albeit dark narratives that you haven't really seen before, and some incredible voice acting and character development and writing, go get this. It's not crazy expensive, and it has stuck with me in a way a lot of games haven't, even games I've liked. And I think that's possibly the greatest compliment I can give a title like that. So that is Slay the Princess. It's out now. It's really something. That's all I can say. It's really something, and I'm very glad I played it, and I'm very glad to see that it seems to be succeeding and that these developers can try to do something else, because they've got some chops without a doubt. So thank you guys very much for watching. I do appreciate it. If you like what you saw here, please do all the normal YouTube things and leave a comment down below. Tell me, have you played this? What did you think of it? What do you think about trying it out? Does this interest you? Are there other visual novels that you thought were really good that maybe break the mold from the traditional sort of anime dating sim kind of thing? Because there are other ones out there, and I'd like to know about those. And you can also follow me over at twitch.tv/pxabstraction. I'm going to be focusing more on doing retro streams there for a while, tackling what I call the deep backlog. But we do indies there as well, including games that are better suited to streaming than YouTube. We have a fantastic community there, and I would love to see you be a part of it. Thanks again, everybody, and I'll see you in the next one. You folks have a good one. Take it easy. I got a nightmare to go into, I guess. See ya.